What's up, Dragon Brood? So we are tackling another day of Zendikar Previews, day 4, I believe it is now. And things are pretty exciting. By the way, if y'all haven't seen it yet, hop over to my exclusive preview video where I preview 2 cards for Zendikar Rising. Thanks, Wizards of the Coast, for that, by the way. But let's get into today's previews because there are some cool things to talk about and we don't want to miss anything, so let's get right to it. Fearless Fledgling, 1 colorless, 1 white, 1/1 creature griffin. Landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Fearless Fledgling. It gains flying until end of turn. This card's really neat. You know, most of the time when stuff has landfall and they would get a bonus, it was usually just until end of turn. This actually gets a +1/+1 counter. This also means that it can go into those Selesnya +1/+1 counter decks or any of the other decks that are going to have a +1/+1 counter theme. It also gets flying, which is really good. This card has a lot going for it. It's kind of like a inconspicuous uncommon, but this card actually probably has some playability. Cragplate Bailoff, 5 green. That is 7 mana. Creature beast, kicker, 2 and a green. This spell can't be countered. It has hexproof. It has haste. If Cragplate Bailoff was kicked, it enters the battlefield with 4 +1/+1 counters on it. Okay, like, y'all know I like me some big honking monsters, right? But this is kind of wild. Okay, first off, it can't be countered, which we like. It's got hexproof, which we like. And it has haste. Doesn't have trample or anything, but that's fine. Can't ask for everything on one card. It is 7 mana. But if you're talking about playing this against a control deck or something else where they have a bunch of spot removal or spell counters late in the game, this card's pretty good to sideboard in. I will say, I don't know how often we're going to have 10 mana to be able to make it a 10/10 haste hexproof, you know, whatever, can't be countered. But this is a card I'm probably going to lose a game or two to just because, like, you know, the card's big. It's a surprise hitter. You know, as far as like how popular things going to be, kind of small. It's probably just a sideboard card. Unless you're playing something with crazy ramping ability, then maybe you play it. But it is strong. Okay, Inscription of Ruin, 2 colorless, a black, sorcery, rare, kicker, 2 black. Choose one. If this spell was kicked, choose any of them instead. Target opponent discards 2 cards. Return target creature card with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Destroy target creature with converted mana cost 3 or less. Y'all, this card is good. It's, okay, like, you just can do a lot with this card. I mean, it's discard 2 cards. All right, that's pretty good against some decks. Returning a creature, pretty good. And it returns it to the battlefield. Granted, it's 2 or less, but it does come right into play, which is a big deal. And then you get to destroy a target creature with mana cost 3 or less. The flexibility this card offers is great. The late game ability for this card is great. And if you can use 2 or 3 of the abilities, I mean, 7 mana is a lot, but the upside could be really big. Royal Eruption, 1 colorless, 1 red, sorcery, kicker of 5 colorless. Royal Eruption deals 3 damage to any target. If this spell was kicked, it deals 5 damage instead. Let me say that, you know, when deck building lately, people have been looking for kind of that 3 damage option that they could play and have some flexibility. It's still hitting an opponent. There really hasn't been anything worthwhile to play in that slot. We have the one that you could pay 3, but if you pay red, it deals 4 instead of 3. We've got Fire Prophecy, we've got Scorching Dragonfire, but this one actually serves a different role that you can still do what you need to do. It's 3 damage. Now, I will say the downside is it's not instant. That is probably the biggest thing. But having the option to do 5 damage later in the game could be beneficial. So it's going to be a balancing act on how important the flexibility is versus the long-term damage. All right, Attended Healer, 3 colorless and a white, creature, core, cleric, an uncommon. Whenever you gain life for the first time each turn, create a 1/1 white cat creature token. 2 and a white, another target cleric gains lifelink until end of turn. So this is interesting, right? Like, does it just go into a cleric deck, or we're trying to gain more life, get some more creatures? Does it go into a cat deck, actually, because there's a few cats that gain life? Do you use that to go wide, I guess? I don't know. There's a bunch of options for this type of card. I don't know if it's necessarily playable in a lot of spots because, again, you know, the cleric stacks don't necessarily want this at 4 mana. The cats don't necessarily want it at 4 mana. So where does it fit? I don't know, but it is an interesting card. Thieving Skydiver, 1 colorless, 1 blue, creature, merfolk, rogue, rare, kicker, X. X can't be 0. Flying. This creature enters the battlefield. If it was kicked, gain control of target artifact with converted mana cost X or less. If that artifact is an equipment, attach it to Thieving Skydiver. So it's okay. As far as standard goes, I don't know how much this will get played. It's probably going to come down to how good is equipment. That being said, it is a rogue, so it still fills some role for party decks, and it flies, and it's a 2/1 creature for 2. So it has a lot going for it already. But I have to say, the actual kicker cost is probably going to be bigger in Legacy and Vintage formats. And it's a big deal because there are a lot of artifacts get played in those formats that cost 0, 1, and 2. So it's very possible you could play this and steal something very important. Another thing I will say, just from a financial standpoint, generally cards that have good abilities in older formats tend to carry some extra value because a lot of people who play those older formats don't open boosters, they just buy singles. So something else to keep on your radar. Marauder, Fury of Akum. 4 red, legendary creature, Minotaur Warrior. Each creature you control gets +1/+0 for each time it has attacked this turn. Okay. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, if it's your main phase, there's an additional combat phase after this phase. At the beginning of that combat, untap all creatures you control. Oh boy. Okay, let me say something here. I really don't like this card. And I know it's going to sound crazy coming from me because I'm a big fan of the red and the green creatures. But me and Elder Gargaroth, we've been tight for a couple months now. We've done some bonding. I think Marauder might come between us. And we're just going to have a sit down as a family and talk about some things. But that aside, this card's really interesting. It's big, it's fun. It does cost 6, so that is a little bit of a hindrance. It can also get you multiple attack steps in a turn, right? Like, let's say you've held on to that Fabled Passage, and it comes into play, you get an additional attack step. You search for a land, you get an additional attack step. Like, that's pretty big. It does give creatures bonuses, which is huge. A certain someone also previewed a card that benefits warriors that if you hadn't seen it, you might want to go click the video. I'll see if I can remember to put it up here so you can go see it. But yeah, there was a preview card that works with this pretty well too. So yeah, this card's big. It's powerful. It's going to be a huge commander card. I mean, I'm definitely going to put this into my Rift commander deck for sure. Lots of stuff going on with this card. I really like it. All right, y'all. This card is wild. Phylath, World Sculptor, 4 red, green. Legendary creature elemental. When Phylath World Sculptor enters the battlefield, create a 0/1 green plant token for each basic land you control. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, put 4 +1/+1 counters on target plant you control. So yeah, and also has a sweet looking art, really. All the things with landfall got this interesting treatment, so if you don't know, very cool to see. But I don't know what to make of this card. It costs 6. It's a 5/5, which isn't great, but it does create you some number of plants. Assuming you're playing all basics, it could be up to 6. That's kind of cool. Or if it comes out later in the game, could be more. When you put a land into play, you turn one of those plants into a 4/5 at a minimum, right? I guess my question is, how likely is it for you to get those tokens? And how much bigger are you expecting them to get? Now, I will say this. If you're playing something like Commander and you can use it with, goodness, what is that other one? The other Zendikar card, when it comes into play, it gives you a plant for each land you control. Like that thing. Now you have 2 things that make plants and are getting bonuses. And like now that could be a real thing. So this card definitely has some room outside of 60 card formats. But who knows? I'm not going to write it off just yet. Okay, I don't know if this card's any good. Low Mage Familiar, colorless, green, blue, beast, 2/4, tap for blue or green. If you cast a kick spell, gain 2 life. There might be something that you can build around with kicker, but really, I'm just highlighting this card because this is like one of the damn cutest piece of arts we've had in probably a standard legal set in a while. Like, it looks like Toothless got breeded with some small dragon and he now lives in a bag or something. Like, I don't know what's going on with the artwork. This thing's kind of cool though. Anyway, just want to share it. Cool card. If you want something to make mana, look this guy's way. Cinderclasm. Colorless, red, instant. Kicker of 1 red. Cinderclasm deals 1 to each creature. If it was kicked, it deals 2 damage to each creature instead. So this isn't bad. I mean, this gives you the option of killing small things or bigger things. For 2 mana, you can kill 1 toughness stuff. For 3 mana, you can kill 2 toughness stuff. And it's instant speed, which is also good, so having that flexibility is pretty nice. Good sideboard card. Not sure if it goes main deck at all, but it's definitely one that's going to get some play. I like this card too. So, Azuls Fury, which is fun because Azul was around in Zendikar, so we were referencing an old character, which is sweet. 2 colorless and a red. Instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature. Azuls Fury deals damage equal to the sacrificed creature's power to any target. Or you can just have this come into play tapped and produce red mana. The reason I like this card is generally when you have these fling type effects, they don't often make the cut in your deck list because they're kind of really situational and you don't really know if you're going to have the big creature sit on the table long enough so you can untap and then attack and use it. But when you have the option of just playing it as a land, it's kind of cool. And I think that's probably the best use of this type of mechanic. You know, when you start seeing spells that normally wouldn't get played in the deck, but now you won't necessarily get stuck with them and you get something to do with it if the game flow just doesn't work out right for the card to be any good. So yeah, I'm definitely looking at this. I will probably play a copy or 2 in a few lists just to try it out. Okay, working off another translation, this is called a Hagro Bite. 2 black, instant. If an opponent controls no basic lands, this spell costs 1 less to cast. Destroy target creature. Hagro Pit is the other side. Just a land, enters the battlefield, tapped, taps for black. This is pretty cool. It's the fact that you can play it for 3. It's possible that if we're playing so many of these double face cards that are lands, you may get to play it for 3 fairly often. Don't know yet. Playing it for 4 isn't bad. You get to kill any creature. But again, if you don't need another creature kill spell and you just need land, like this is a good option. And you're going to play creature kill spells anyway, right? Spot removal is a thing. So playing this doesn't hurt anything and you get the upside of just potentially getting a land. Shatter Skull Smashing. X red sorcery. Shatter Skull Smashing deals X damage divided as you choose among up to 2 target creatures and or planeswalkers. If 6 or more, or if X is 6 or more, Shatter Skull Smashing deals twice X damage divided as you choose among them instead. This is another one that kind of falls in that space of kind of like it, kind of don't. Because you can't target players, which is a big deal, but you can target any number of creatures or planeswalkers. So oftentimes you can use it to get rid of 2 things. It does have the other templating that you can pay 3 life to have it come into play untapped if you don't want it to come into play tapped, which is cool. So I guess, well, first off, we're getting to see that this is a cycle. So every color is going to have at least 1 rare or mythic land, it looks like, that is going to be pay 3 life, let you put it into play untapped. This card's probably going to get played. Again, I think it has that restriction of generally being in just enough of a situation where you're not going to want to have it in your deck because you can't finish your opponent with it, or there just may not be the right targets. But when it can also be a land, now it could be worth that risk. Seagate Restoration. 4 colorless, blue, that is 7. Also a mythic. Draw cards equal to the number of cards in your hand plus 1. You have no maximum hand size for the rest of the game. And it has the untap clause for 3 life, or it can just be a land that comes into play tapped. Generally not a fan of these types of cards. The best use for this is going to be in Commander, obviously. But there's already so many things that, make it to where you don't have a max hand size. Still going to attack the blue players first, then the black players, and whatever. Y'all know the drill. But this is pretty solid. I think you can play 1 of these, maybe 2, but you can get by playing at least 1 in your control decks or whatnot if you just wanted to have extra mana that comes into play on tap so you don't miss a beat. And later in the game, it can just restock your hand. So who knows? It may not be as good as the other ones we've seen so far, but I don't think any of these of this cycle have been bad that we've seen. All right, everyone, I think those are the most interesting cards that were previewed in the last 24 hours. Though there were 2 that got previewed here on this channel on another video that I put up earlier this morning. Go check that out because both cards are very interesting. I just didn't think it was worth covering it here and doubling up when I have a fun content and my worst half Troll Dragon showed up to make everybody's life miserable because that's what he does. But anyway, definitely remember, if you haven't liked this video, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. Come back every day while we do the recaps of the previews and talk about different strategy with each card. And if you want to catch me on streaming, come chat in the Discord or catch me on Twitter, whatever. All the links are down below in the description. But that's all I have for you for now. We'll see you next time.